I often hear from so many of you that when you hear a story of another responder going through PTSD, going through burnout, sleep, exhaustion, um, all of those things, that you thought you were the only one going through this. And today, I have the most amazing officer with us today, 27-year career before he was medicaled out. And he is here today to tell you his story so that you know that when you are feeling after being medicaled out, that loss of pride is kind of gone in your entire career. The shame, the feeling of defeat, the feeling like PTSD has this hold on you, or like you're not ever going to get out of that hole that you dug, that you are stuck in. He is here today to talk about that, to talk about how he got out of that hole and where he is now. So I am going to be introducing you to Simon. Simon is, as I said, 27 years law enforcement. And let's just begin. So Simon, thank you very much for coming here today.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Just honestly, as you and I both agree, if this story helps even just one person, then we've done our job. So let's start then.
Absolutely.
Let's start then with learning a bit about your career. So 27 years, you would have done a lot in those 27 years. Tell us a bit about your amazing law enforcement career.
Well, I served in the British Police Service, which is different to the service over there in a number of different ways. I started off as a probationary constable at Weston-super-Mare, which is a seaside town. Very busy in the summer, very quiet in the winter, but a high turnover of staff, very fast-paced station to work at, where there was a lot of drugs problems, a lot of overspill from Bristol. And I served there for 3.5 years, during which time I was seriously assaulted. Following the assault, I was injured sufficiently to warrant being taken inside for a year. So I worked for a year in the Force Communications Department, so dealing with all the comms for different districts. Bit of logistic work, working with firearms and doing firearms jobs. So it's quite interesting work. There I also went to a small town called Bridgewater. I served there for 5.5 years. Again, very interesting town, very heavy, very drugs heavy, very the local population didn't like the police very much. So it was very much trying to build bridges between the police and the populace, who we had to obviously police by consent in this country. So that's the reason for that. And after 5.5 years, I worked for a department called Support Group, which is the spontaneous public order, specialised scene searching, which consisted of sergeant and 5 PCs. We did a number of murder scenes, number of suicides, a large amount of work with the military for scene searches and what have you. Very sort of high profile. It was very high profile because we were working all throughout the force area. Say 3.5 years on that. And then I went to something called the Road Crime Section, which was basically PCs being given fast cars and told to go and catch baddies. So that's what we did for 3.5 years. Just drove around in nice cars and caught baddies. And it was good fun. Really enjoyed it. Then I came back to borough work. I worked on the town centre team in Taunton. At that stage of my career, I was going through a divorce, so I was totally engrossed in work, as it gave me an escape from sort of what was happening in my private life. And I became the most proactive officer in the force, with the most prisoners, the most stop checks, and what have you. I did that for 6 years. Then I worked in a major incident homicide team. Did that for a year. Dealt with a large number of homicides and the after effects of the homicide, in as much as what you saw, what you did, dealing with the victims, being professional when it comes to dealing with victims. Then I went to the intelligence department, working with drugs intelligence. At that time, we were experiencing what is now called the county lines drug dealing, which is dealing from London. So you'll get people down dealing from London into your area, but you'll never speak to them directly. You'll speak to a phone in London, and they give their orders via mobile phones. So a lot of technical work with mobile phone usage and coverage, a lot of warrants, a lot of staying up late and staying out late and long hours of duty. And at that time, I'd had my second daughter, Poppy, so I didn't get to see her that much. It wasn't that good. But then I did about 3 years of that and went back to the borough, thinking it would be the same as it was the 10 years prior to working on the borough, where you were just arresting people all the time. It had changed radically, and I wasn't really up in step with how it had changed. I went to a nasty job, nasty drowning, and that really ended my career as I began to experience the full effects of severe and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And 6 months later, I was medical out of the job after 27 years.
Yeah. And I know today we are going to talk about some tough questions. You and I have talked about this before, and if this does help other people, then that's why we're asking them. So let's talk. I think first, though, your first PTSD, was it 2005, if I'm correct? When was your first PTSD diagnosis?
My first diagnosis was in 1997.
97, okay.
No, in 97. My second, the second diagnosis which was complex, was 2014.
2000. Okay, so between 1997 and 2014, you were working all that time with PTSD.
Yes, I was.
And so throughout that as well, you had some big traumas that hit you as well. We don't need to touch on what the traumas are per se, but can I ask, after the traumas happened, what type of support was given to you in your service?
Not very much at all, really. Not very much at all. And after going to one particularly distressing incident, which was a major incident, a double homicide, we were offered no support, no counselling, no nothing really. It only became mandatory in the latter years of my service that after a traumatic event, you'd have a major incident debrief. But even then, they were scanned and not done to the letter. It was very much a case of, you're a big boy now, you're a cop, just deal with it.
Yeah. And so during that time, so doing the math, 97, 2014, that's 17 years. So in those 17 years, now that you know all the signs and symptoms, what were you experiencing?
Well, all of them really. I was very hypervigilant all the time. Going to work, at work, off duty, I could never relax, never switch off. The night times were horrendous for me because I just have a racing mind all the time. Physically, I'd get sweats, feel sick. And emotionally, I was drained, and it was like I'd go to all these things that I would never cry. And then something very little, very minor, something on the TV or something on with my daughters, and I'd be in floods of tears, and it would just come at the most inappropriate time. I was it made me very angry, very aggressive, very reactive. So my days weren't filled with positivity. They're always filled with negativity, as to what's going to happen today, what's going to go wrong today, am I going to get assaulted again today? So it made you very, very aware of what could happen to you. It was just pain all the time. It was terrible pain. And these traumas lived with me every day. I would dream about them. I would experience them when I was having flashbacks. And I'd have 2 or 3 flashbacks a day and my flashbacks were all consuming. Yeah. They would come at the most inappropriate time and just consume me for a couple of minutes. So I didn't know where I was, what I was doing. A whole plethora of things that just come with the condition. Yeah. And I just lived with it. I didn't know what was happening to me. But I used work as a crutch. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I used work as a crutch to support me and to get me through every day was hard work. I mean, I'd regularly work 14, 15-hour days.
How was your sleep?
Have very little sleep and then come back and do. Sleeping was terrible, Andy. It really was. I mean, I've been on sleeping tablets now for the last 20 years. Because of one particular bad bout of insomnia I had really was to the point of being dangerous.
Yeah.
Because I was driving high-powered police vehicles all the time.
Yeah, but let's actually break that down about sleep and how it's dangerous on the job, because quite often I get people telling me their average is 4 to 5 hours maximum at a time is all their body allows them. And from what you guys learn in all of your training, 4 to 5 hours a night maximum, that's sleep deprivation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then you're going into the job and you guys have to make life or death decisions. You guys have to, for yourself, for your partner, in order to be able to come home to your families. That just the sleep part alone. So if we were to go back and kind of look at symptoms that you had as well, like how long had the sleep affected you? If you were 1997 was your diagnosis. Before that, how was your sleep?
Sleeping has never been great for me. But I had the unfortunateness of quite a deprived childhood. So sleeping was never great, but it was certainly markedly different after 97 than it was before.
Okay.
I would sleep, I don't know, 6 hours a night, and then after 97 it'd be like 4 or 5 hours a night. And like you say, it is sleep deprivation. It's no wonder they use it as torture, because it is so effective. And like you say, we've got to make life and death decisions in a matter of seconds. In the blink of an eye, you decided whether someone's going to be arrested or let go. And then you've got to go on to justify that decision. If you're doing it on 4 hours of sleep, which is not enough for you to cognitively function correctly.
Yeah. And then how are you at reports, with writing your reports? I don't think I've ever asked you that before. How was your memory and recall of what happened when you had to write your reports after?
Well, I've always been quite lucky and blessed with a quite good memory. It was what got to me was the brain fog because of lack of sleep. I would always be able to write accurate and correct reports of an incident, a major incident. There were times when it was more difficult than others. I'd have to be supported by the crutch of caffeine, which I'm glad to say I'm rid of. But yeah, I wasn't too bad. With that. But say some days were better than others.
Yeah, and we find too, it's the sleep, it's the brain fog. We find so many of you are amazing at reports at the start, but at the end, it takes a lot of energy to do the reports to get them to be the same as they used to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned your childhood too, and I know that because of your childhood as well, that's what also led you into policing. How though has your childhood also affected how you were on the job and how it affected your PTSD?
Well, it's interesting really, because my childhood, I was the son of a police officer. My dad worked in London and then transferred down to where we are now in Somerset in England. He was very much a vacant dad because he was working all the hours God sends to get away from my mother, who was the main protagonist in my life, who made my life a misery because she hated the police and hated me because I wanted to go into the police to follow my father's footsteps. And it wasn't until through therapy that I really sat and explored this with my therapist. And she said that you went into the policing to right all the wrongs that were done to you in childhood. So I was very passionate. When I was a police officer, anything to do with kids were my kryptonite. I couldn't deal with I could deal with it, but I would take it very much to heart if I dealt with a job where there were kids involved, or they'd had to see some violence, or they were being neglected or abused in some way. I used to take that really personally. I mean, every cop you speak to says that dealing with stuff with kids is the worst, because it is, and after having my own daughters, that really did change the way I dealt with things. Because you got your own, you can relate to, like I went to a job where a little girl was present whilst her mother and father were beating each other up in the house, and she was sat outside the house, and I just happened to drive past, saw a little girl sat there, and I saw my own daughter, almost, and it made me really take a stop and went back and dealt with the incident, and they were both carted off and taken to respective cells. But you were never the hero because you'd taken mummy and daddy away, and that's what and that job, particular job, that's what I took quite personally, is that I'd done what I knew was the right thing to do, and yet you weren't the hero.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, you're taking the mum and dad away. But my childhood impacted greatly on how I did my job and how I was very dedicated and very committed, and how I joined the job as a surrogate family.
Yeah.
The family I never had.
Which leads us to when you went on medical leave. How did that feel then, being put on medical leave when for 27 years they had been your surrogate family?
I felt completely cast out and alone, because they don't help. The process of ill health medical retirement is quite a complicated one, and the onus is on the officer to prove that they are no longer fit for duties. Now, I've been sent to a psychiatrist who was the same one who saw me in '97, fortunately. And when he said that I had complex post-traumatic stress disorder, he wrote a big long report and said that I was no longer fit for duties. That was passed to my force medical officer, who said, yeah, you're no longer fit. You're no longer fit to wear the uniform. Basically, that's you on medical leave for the next 6 months prior to going out. And I felt crushed. The police was all I ever lived for. I loved it dearly, and I do miss it dearly. But I wouldn't have been able to heal in the way that I've healed if I was still in the job.
Yeah.
So as difficult as it was, you had to play the long game.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a lot as well. And there's that sense of pride, that chink in your armor, that wondering if there's something wrong with you. There's shame in all of this when it happens at first, when you're in that hole, when you're in the big of it and the deep of it, and you feel like you're just cast away from them without any support. You're on your own, and no one's navigating your way or holding your hand and helping you figure out how to get out of this hole.
That's right. That's exactly how it feels.
I hear it so much, because it's that thing where so many are reaching out for help, but they fear getting medicaled out for many reasons. In the States, I mean, the coverage when you're medicaled out, you are not financially covered very well at all in certain services. It's all different. It's nothing's consistent as far as what happens after. But
right, okay.
There's just that sense of that chink in your armor, because when you are a responder, you need to have that front, and your armor needs to be fully for everybody else. But when you show that chink, I know you and I have talked about this when we've talked about suicide before. And when we've talked about suicide, because you have been there yourself.
I have.
And we were talking about somebody else who, it was after one of your colleagues had committed suicide. And we were talking. And I'd said, and you had asked, why didn't he come to me and ask me for help? And do you remember me asking you when you were in that state, why you didn't? And you said, it was because people would have seen I had a chink in my armor. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. And I think about it now, and I know that the guy who committed suicide wouldn't have wanted anybody else to see that side of him.
Yeah.
And I know when I was having my suicidal ideations, And after the 2 attempts I made to take my own life, I didn't even reach out then, because I thought, I just genuinely thought, I can't have people seeing me like this. I can't have me being seen this way. For 27 years, I've done most things. I've had multiple threats and risks to my life. I've dealt with them all. And to admit to someone that you need help, or to reach out and say, look, I'm not doing all right, is a massive thing to do. But I know now you just got to do it. You have to do it. No matter how hard it is, you can't deal with these things alone. No man is an island. And you've got to pick the person you reach out to. Like I reached out to you. And I think it shows the integrity of the person you reach out to when they say, when like you were completely non-judgmental, accepting of the feelings that I was going through, and not making a decision on, oh, well, that's bad, or you shouldn't bother with him. He's a dead loss. Having that person when you reach out, it really does mean the world to me. How it was when I said those words that I never thought I'd ever say.
Yeah, I remember. Just for people who are listening to, they don't know about our first encounter. But yeah, you commented a little bit, not so positively, on one of my posts. And when somebody does that, the first thing I do is I first check to see your profile to see if you are a responder or not. If you're not, and it's just hatred towards officers and what I do and any of that, then I let you be, because that's not my battle to fight. But as soon as I see that you're an officer, I always get curious as to why what I do in helping first responders upsets you so much. And it was in that conversation where you said I would never get it. And I said, I think I'd said something about the statistics of suicide being 3 times that of on-duty deaths. And you said I might become one of your statistics. And I remember dropping everything, because I'm not a therapist. PTSD is not my wheelhouse. We'll talk about what I did do with you. But I instantly, I pulled out all of my contacts. Like, my husband knows, even to this day, if we're in the middle of doing something or I'm on my phone, I'm like, I have to go. He knows. I'm usually upstairs and I am pulling out every single resource that I have, because somebody has just told me that they're suicidal. And I make sure that I do not stop until I make sure that they have connected with somebody that is going to be able to help them, a crisis center, like anything, whatever I can find in their area. I mean, you're in the UK, so I was like pulling out all my UK people. I'm like, I need something now.
Yeah.
I need this help. I need this right there. And that's where we connected you with that. Like, we didn't even start working together, I think, for about 6 months after that, because we were trying to get you through PTSD treatments, through PTSD therapies, through all of these things. But we found that you were struggling with them. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were really struggling with all of your PTSD treatments because you were so exhausted, because you weren't sleeping, because your motivation and drive was absolutely low. Your stress system, your physical stress system, was so exhausted that the energy and the brain power that you needed to make it through PTSD treatment was too much for your body at that time. Am I?
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely. The sleep deprivation, the lack of motivation, lack of drive, the feeling that this is going to be my life forever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to feel any different. I remember I said to my wife, at the beginning of it, I turned around to her and said to her one day, I said, I don't think I'm ever going to smile again. And it was that sort of deep, dark depression that I slipped into. Because I wasn't eating the right things. I was not sleeping correctly. I was abusing alcohol, and doing all those bad things that are the diametric opposite of what you should be doing. That I just couldn't face going through my old demons again, because I was living with them all the time.
Yeah.
And it was, therapy was, although I did have therapy when I left the police, the therapist I had was a civilian therapist, and had never dealt with a first responder. And I think, especially not a cop. And I think unless you've been around cops all your life, or you are a cop, nobody gets it.
Yeah.
Obviously you do, but nobody gets it. Nobody gets what it's like to be in a patrol car and go to a job and have to do something either unpleasant or nasty or take someone away and live the other side of it while holding your partner's life in your hands. It's that sort of thing, that sort of incident or whatever, unless you've done it and lived it, you can't ever experience or can't ever truly understand what it's like to be a cop.
Yeah.
But yeah, my stress system was totally shot. And I had no idea of the relation between your gut and stress, and I had no idea what I was doing was just completely wrong. I'm making it worse.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, when we ask people what they're trying everything that they can get their hands on that is going to help them. And if that is a shot of whiskey and a shot of NyQuil together in order to get you to sleep, you're not doing it because because life is roses. You're doing that because you know what sleep deprivation does, and it is the only thing at this point in time that you understand and know of to get you to fall asleep. Like, we can't fault anybody you can't fault you guys for what you're trying. Like, all the pills, like the medicine cabinet of pills that you're still on quite a few, but you have been able to get off of some and decrease some dosage. We're not finished working with you yet. But as your system is getting stronger, you're able to get off of more and more of your medicines.
Yeah, that's right.
And
yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So, like, the thing is when we first started working together, when we decided, we've been chatting for like 6 months, and then COVID hit, and you were having catastrophic thoughts every 2 to 3 minutes.
That's right. I was in a dreadful state.
Every 2 to 3 minutes, and your therapy, you couldn't get to therapy. It was, you were in such, and that's when you and I are talking. I was like, why don't we try? I know PTSD is I'm not the therapy. I'm not, like, I don't know what I can do, because I had not complex PTSD. I know absolutely outside of my wheelhouse, outside of my scope of practice. You want supporting your stress system, your physical stress system, I'm there. Like, I can do all the science and physical and help you with all of that. And I'm like, let's just do this. And you were like, yeah, let's do it. And in 1 month of just supporting your stress system, your catastrophic thoughts went from every 2 to 3 minutes to only 2 to 3 a day. Do you remember that?
I do remember it, and I am forever in your debt for what you did for me in that month. I really am.
That was, yeah. And all we did,
because
Yeah. In that month, what did we do? We started getting the 50 hormones that your stress system manages. We gave them support. We got
Yeah.
with working
We
on
did.
those
Yeah.
hormones, we got a little bit of energy up, motivation and drive. Your brain got a little clearer. Your hypervigilance decreased a little bit from working on all of those 50 hormones in conjunction.
Yeah, did.
We got you to start sleeping a little bit better in that first month. You still were waking mid-sleep, but we got you falling asleep a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And starting to wake with some energy in that first month. And we started training then your nervous system. In that first month, we got your nervous system starting to train. We started training your resting nervous system. So it was starting to get stronger and not be kicked out because it was being overtaken by your stress nervous system. That's what we were doing, right? Yeah. And that was the first month. So you had all those changes in the first month. And it was later that we started digging more into the gut. And I mean, we're still digging into your gut, healing your gut. But as we're doing that, you're getting happier. I mean, how often do you smile now?
I smile once a day, once or twice a day. And life is, although we are going back into lockdown in this country because of COVID, it is what it is. This time round, because of the work that we've done, I can look at it for what it is. It's a necessary thing. It's only going to be for a month. I get to see my kids more, which is wonderful. Because I love my girls more than anything in this world. And I can smile, I can relax, I can look at things positively. I'm not the same person that I was 6 months ago. Not at all. Because the back then the PTSD was so strong and it was so prominent in my thoughts all the time that it wouldn't allow me to be alive. It wouldn't allow me to smile. It wouldn't allow me to live a normal life.
Yeah. And I don't want to take all the credit for everything that's gone on with you. What we did was we got your stress system calmer so that your brain got clearer, your sleep gets sorted. I mean, you now have one night. How often do you get woken up now with night terrors? How often?
I think it was once last week. Once last week, going from pretty much every night.
Yeah. So we have that, but you're able to get yourself out of them quickly. You're not in that hypervigilant state anymore. So you're able to actually big picture think, process things, and get it done. So we got you to that point with things where you're getting things done around the day, you're calmer with your kids. But that did not do anything with your traumas and your experience with all of that have to do with your PTSD. So that's where Sam came in. And
that's right, Sam. Yeah, of course.
And so, we have to 100% give her credit. So Sam, just for people to know, she used to be a law enforcement officer, and now she is a therapist, PTSD trauma therapist that works with first responders. And that made a world of difference because you have also tried many other PTSD treatments and stuff that were not specific to first responders. So that was a switch that we made as well. That was as well. My amazing connections in the UK were so awesome. I was like, who do you know that only does first responders and works with suicides and all of this stuff? And that's where they threw me names. And we gave you a whole interview process. So for people to know, even though they are a therapist that works with first responders, you still have to connect with them and their personality. So we gave you a list of questions to interview them as much as interviewing you. And you came back from that and went, I really like her, Andy. Like,
that's right. We did. Yeah.
I connect with her. She gets it. This is totally different than any other therapy I've been to because she works with first responders.
Yeah. Right from the word go, we just clicked. and it was brilliant. I ended up having 18 sessions with her over 18 weeks, and the transformation was just amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I'd gone from being hypervigilant to having night terrors, to having flashbacks, to having all these sorts of things. And how she worked was, it wasn't a pity party. It was a, let's look at what the trauma is. Let's talk about it. Let's write it down. Let's, write letters to the victims that are no longer here, that you can have and see, that are tangible. And it was that, through that head-on exposure to all the traumas that I've been through, and it turns out that in my service there's a total of 12 major incidents that had led to the state that I was in. And I do now. I'm out of therapy now. I've been out for 2 weeks. It is a bit of a shock coming out of therapy, but she's given me some skills that I can take away to live my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to be honest with people. How much did therapy suck in the beginning?
Oh, it's dreadful. It really was. It was horrible.
Yeah.
Going back into all those things that had caused me so much upset was just the worst. Yeah. It was really, really hard.
But going through it? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
All I was going to say was, but by dealing with the hard stuff, you see it for what it is. It gets out there. You can put it in a box and you can file it away, and you go, yeah, that's not a trauma anymore. That's now a memory. And if I choose to think about it, that's my choice. Yeah. But it doesn't come out and grab me like it used to.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing though is, so it was a combination, because looking back to, had you tried to go to Sam before we started working together, when you were in that catastrophic state, would you have been able to achieve what you have achieved with her now?
No, not at all.
Yeah. I mean, there was one of your sessions with her after that it got you into a suicidal state again.
Yeah, it did.
That was the beginning. But you were at a state enough where you reached out to myself, you reached out to Sam, that you were able to then put the pieces together to get your stress system calm enough, and the tools that she gave you, that you were okay.
That's right. I was.
Like, we really need people to understand that therapy sucks. It is amazing. And what you come out with at the other end is your life. That you have to go through that crap and weed through it in order to get there. But it is going to suck. You have to know that going into anything in the beginning, it sucks. It's messy. It's unknown territory to you as to what's going on. But going in with your stress system as strong as possible, going in there allows you to be able to get through it easier as well, and get out the other side and get your life back. So let's tell people where you are now. Like, what were you doing in a day before we started working together, and what do you do in a day now?
Well, it was very restrictive in my days. I think of days when COVID first hit, and all I would do is sit in a chair, staring at the news, working myself up into a state of near hysteria, and not leaving the seat, not wanting to go out of the house. I became almost agoraphobic overnight. But now my days are taking the kids to school, going doing the shopping, taking the dog for a walk, going out and doing some some working out as and when I can do, cleaning the house, making the house nice and tidy for my wife who works, and for a nice environment for my kids. And it just completely transformed. You know, I'm doing now as opposed to just existing.
Yeah. Before you were living in your past traumas, and now you're living in today.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm living in the now.
And how were your moods before, and your relationship and dynamic with your kids versus now?
Oh, I was very snappy. I was very irritable. I was, just not a nice person to be around, really. Just because of because of being in the PTSD and having that dominate my life, I was snappy and just not pleasant to be around. Just very, very all consumed in the past. Now I'm out of that state, which is some of my kids will testify is good. Yeah. I'm fully involved in their life. I'm fully involved in their schoolwork, and because when they were on when we were on lockdown, obviously the school shut, so I was forced to become a maths teacher overnight, which wasn't very good. My math has proved to me my math is still terrible, but it propelled me into being in their life in the now, and just more accepting of the fact that they're just kids, that they have their own things going on. Like my daughter Lily, she's very empathic, and I didn't realise that. And we did the 5 love languages, which were a wonderful, wonderful thing. I wish I'd known them years ago. Yeah. They're just it's just so insightful of seeing in their little lives, and I just treasure every minute of every day with them. I do.
And so your wife is your rock. She is why you are here today. And
yes,
I remember, what was it? I think a month or two ago, you started saying, I'm able to be there for her now. She's not just always there for me now.
That's right. It was around the time of lockdown when we'd been doing some work together, and I've been doing some work with Sam, and there was a lot of pressure on her to do the exam grades for her students, and she was having real stress about it, and I was able to sit and listen to her, and for her to offload on me, and for me to do what I could. I mean, practically there was nothing I could do, but by tidying the house and doing the laundry and making things nice, she didn't have to worry about that. So she could put her whole energy into what she needed. And that's something that was very, very rarely happened before, because the fact that PTSD is all consuming and depression is all consuming. And it's a very selfish illness, because all you do is thinking about how bad you feel. I was able to open my eyes and say, do you know what? Ro needs a bit of love now. She needs a bit of compassion and a bit of offloading. So I'm going to do that for her. And you're absolutely right. She is my rock. She's everything to me. Yeah. She was a police officer as well, so she understands the police officer ethos. So she gets it as well. She does.
Yeah. And now you have your relationship back, your family back, and your life back.
Yeah, I do. And it is wonderful.
There's one other thing that just keeps popping in my mind that before we do sign off that I wanted to talk about, because I know it was a huge mindset shift for you as well, is for anybody who leaves a police force, anything. It could be fire, EMS, dispatch, like wherever. As you said, they were your family for your entire career. They were everything to you. And when you leave, medical doubt, retire, quite often you feel like none of them reach out anymore. None of them talk to you. None of them are, that you feel like you were almost ostracized by them. But do you remember us having that conversation that one day when I asked to think back about what your life was like when you were in your career? And I said, how long were your shifts? How long did it take you to get home? How much time did you have with your kids in between shifts? How much sleep did you get in between your shifts? When in there would you have had time to reach out to a colleague?
Yeah, exactly. I remember the conversation very well.
Right.
And my biggest problem was exactly what you say. I felt ostracized by these people, the people I used to stand shoulder to shoulder with. Mm-hmm. I felt like I'd done something wrong, or I was an outsider now. But nothing could be further from the truth. And I found that by actually just reaching out to people, going through my phone, finding someone I haven't spoken to for ages, sending them a text message going, all right, mate, how you doing? And when they would come back to me, it was like, oh, I'm not alone anymore.
Yeah.
And that the first 2 years of my retirement, because I've been out for 5 now, that was the feeling. That was a very lonely feeling that I'd done something that was wrong. And now I regularly reach out to people, not necessarily reach out and say, look, I'm having a bad day, or can you help me? I just reach out and say, look, how you doing? I haven't seen you for ages. Do you fancy coffee? That sort of thing. And it does your morale the world of good.
Yeah.
It really does.
And the reaction from them has been, I'm so thankful or so happy that you reached out, because I think about you often, but I never have a chance, or it's only in midnights, or it's at weird times when you normally could be reaching out on shift, if it's a quiet spot on shift, that they say, I'm so happy you reached out because I think of you often.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's the wonderful thing about it.
Yeah. And the thing is that they also have, once you start asking them questions about their life, sometimes you find out that they're also struggling. Their sleep is off. Their motivation and drive is off. Their brain is foggy. They're struggling to make it through their days. That it's not that they don't want to reach out to you. It's that they don't want to talk to anybody. They don't want to let anybody know that they have a chink in their armor.
Yeah, that's right.
Because almost everybody that you have spoke to, that you have reached out to, that has opened up to you, has been feeling some of the signs of burnout, the sleep issues, the exhaustion, the motivation and drive, and it has been affecting some part of their life, and they are struggling as well.
Yeah. It's amazing, really. Some people you think that would never happen to. I've spoken to, and they're like, they're saying to me that, exactly what you said, that they're just experiencing burnout. Is the way society is these days, and the police are always society's punching bag. Yeah. They're always getting the rough end of it, and all the time. And they're just at their wits' end with it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is the person that you are working beside is very possibly feeling the exact same way that you are. So I just want to say thank you very, very, very much for telling us your story.
You're welcome.
absolutely confident that this is going to help so many. So thank you. I know that your journey has been tough. But as you say, everything happens for a reason, and you appreciate your family so much now, and you're getting your life back, and you're enjoying your life and appreciating your life. So I'm excited to just keep watching you on this journey as we go. So thank you so much, Simon.
You're more than welcome anytime.